Hi there. For this final part of the answers to your midterm practice exam, I just want to give you a little bit of a structure that you can look at your synthesis to see if you're at least have the right form, that you're doing the right thing to try and answer that prompt. So I want to give you some things that I want you to then look at your synthesis response and see if you did them, and that will give you a good indication if you're doing the right thing for this, the final part of the exam. The first thing is to make sure that you have a clear answer to this prompt. So you were asked, how has the historical evolution of money as described in the video Missouri State 2013 impacted your previous understanding of what banks are and what they do? What now makes more sense about what banks are and what they do? So now look at your exam response and see, is there a sentence in there that tells clearly what you learned about how banking and money have evolved and how you now understand banks better? In general, I think this either naturally goes at the beginning of your response or at the very end. That is, you either come up with what you think is the answer and you put that at the beginning to make that clear for us as the reader, and then you show that through your explanation of things from the video and things from the course. Or sometimes what students do is they start synthesizing. They think of things in the video that help them understand that prompt. They think of other ideas from the course. They describe how those interact. And then, kind of, when they're done with that, they're able to look at what they have already synthesized and come up with the answer. And both approaches work. Sometimes you kind of need to see what the interaction, what the synthesis is, and then you clearly state what your answer is at the end. Sometimes you're able to plan or prepare what your answer is and put it at the beginning. Either way, I want you to highlight or circle what is your response to the prompt. Do you clearly answer how this video has affected your understanding of what banks do and hopefully made it more clear? Have you described that? The second thing you need to ask yourself is, okay, how sophisticated is your response? How how much detail and with what kind of meaning do you describe what this answer is? There are some basic ones, and that can work. It's similar, it helped, it made more clear. Those are basic, simple answers. They tell how the video impacted that. The more you're able to describe in detail, the better your synthesis can be. For example, of a sophisticated answer, you could say something like, while I understood what banks were and how they did, seeing this video let me see where those ideas came from. Seeing the history of this helped me understand why banks were like that. That would be an example of a very sophisticated answer. Once you've looked at how you answered the prompt, you can now look for how well you used the video. So it says to take ideas from the top. Go through your response, what you wrote, and see how many specific ideas from Missouri State 2013 are in your response. There needs to be at least two, and probably two or three is the best answer. But do you clearly state specific ideas that come from Missouri State 2013? Find them now down below in your response. The thing that's important here is to remember to take specific ideas from the video. That is, you don't really take the general overall thing, but you take specific things that you heard and learned from that video that impact your understanding of what banks are. The more specific your idea, the better. The other thing you will need to check is, once you have those specific ideas from the video, do you also take a sentence to explain in more detail what those ideas mean and how well you understand them? That is, you take an idea from the video and then you use another sentence to better explain what that idea means. So, for each of those ideas that you found from the video, do you also explain them in your own words? Look to check how well you have developed the idea that you're taking from the video. Next, you need to show how those ideas from Missouri State 2013 interact with ideas from what we learned in the course. So now look through what you've written in your response and see, do you have two or three different sources from the course, again, with an idea that comes from them? Check to see that you have multiple sources from our course and specific ideas that you took from them to use in your synthesis. Again, just like you did before, you want to make sure that one, you took specific ideas from these sources, and two, that you developed them, that you took a sentence at least to explain what that idea is and how that relates to what you're talking about. You don't just quickly mention a source. You mention an idea from a source, and then you also develop what that idea is. So count your sentences. When you introduce the source, do you then after that proceed to explain what this idea is from the source? The final thing you need to check for is describing how these ideas interact. So when you bring up ideas from the course that we learned, do you then describe how they interact with the ideas from the talk? Do you include sentences with language that describe in what particular ways ideas from the sources in our class interact with things that came from the video that you watched for the exam? This is the final part of the synthesis. So you already have an answer for the prompt and you've taken ideas both from the video and from the course that we've had. And now you have to use your language to describe the relationship between these different ideas and how they work to support whatever your answer to the prompt was. So finally, check again your response to see, do you include language and sentences that describe the interaction between these different ideas, that show how they work together to come to the understanding that you used in your prompt? If you've done all of those things, you have a clear answer to the prompt, you've taken multiple specific ideas from the video and shown that you know what they mean, and you found two or three ideas from the course, described how they mean, and then you've used language to describe how these ideas interact to answer that prompt, then you're well on your way to having a very good synthesis response. By checking your answers to see these, you should be able to see how well you're doing what you're supposed to be doing to do well in these synthesis writings. I look forward to talking to you about how you did in the actual midterm when we meet one on one after you take the exam. See you on Tuesday.